and welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host, Paula Taylor, and this is episode 182. So today we are going to talk about disengaging from limiting beliefs. And I was thinking about how to talk about this, and I could not start the show. Like I was sitting in the chair, just looking at the clock, like, I don't think I can do this. So this is one of those really vulnerable kind of things. And I know that I am absolutely not the only one going through this right now, and that hearing about my struggles will hopefully help other people who might be struggling. And I'm going to tell this in a little bit. I'm going to go a little bit backwards. I'm going to talk about something that happened to me on Monday in a session I received. But first I want to talk about what happened to me yesterday. So just quickly, we've been talking for many months now about the 3D and the 5D. 3D being a more dense energetic reality, all or nothing, black or white, yes or no. 5D being a more expanded energetic reality, more unconditional love, more expansion, more inclusivity. And we knew this was going to be a tough transition. Those of us who came here at this time in history karmically made this decision. And I have to say, it's been kicking our butts. And I think this is one of those times when if someone tells you that they're not having any kind of struggle or any difficulty with this transition, they're likely not being truthful, probably with themselves, possibly with you. They might be practicing a little bit of what we call spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity. I saw a comment on a TikTok the other day, or I think it was Facebook. It was a class someone was offering. And it was like healing for healers kind of thing. And somebody said, why would someone who's not fully healed try to heal other people? And I just like kind of laughed at that because that's a really 3D statement and it implies that healing is ever over, and it's not, because we are always evolving. That is what expansion means. The universe is continually expanding. We are meant to continually expand, and part of that work is living through the contraction that leads to the next expansion. I liken it to birthing. Contraction, expansion, contraction, expansion. We birth something, we're going to have another baby. We contract and expand, and we do that over and over again, just like breathing. There's a contraction and expansion there. And the other thing sometimes that comes in is this idea of like pulling an arrow back. You know, there's a lot of tension and difficulty when you're pulling an arrow back and it feels really difficult. There's some struggle, and then you release the arrow and it flies forward. That's kind of the expansion. But then if we want to move more, we have to pull back again and then expand. So this is a normal process that every human is meant to go through. And not owning up to the contraction or the struggle or the tension or whatever word you want to use for it, the difficulty, does not serve you, and it doesn't serve those around you. And especially for someone like me who is talking to an audience of people, it serves the people listening to me for me to tell you that this is hard for me too. And that's a little bit what this show is going to be about today. So we're going to start with the big contraction that came kind of right after this understanding that I got on Monday about this long-standing pattern I've had. And we're going to talk about that because there's some great tools in here. So yay, spoiler alert, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Well, we're going to go through the tunnel first, because sometimes that's how this work happens. Sometimes somebody will come in to see me physically or in a virtual space, and we'll move we will move a whole bunch of energy, or a huge amount of energy, a huge bunch of energy together. And there's a huge expansion in the moment. And then what follows after that is this really big contraction. And sometimes it really throws people for a loop. Sometimes it feels really difficult because you have this big expansion of this clearing, but then it sort of stirs up old things that need to be seen. And it's really common to be in this awakening journey and reach multiple points at which you are having a hard time seeing where the next expansion will come from. Or you're in the tunnel and you're having a hard time trusting that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, that the tunnel will in fact end. You could also think of that, we're just going through a series of tunnels. You're in the tunnel, you're out in the light. You're in the tunnel, you're out in the light. Over and over and over again. That's kind of what this work is. So I had this huge kind of awareness and shift on Monday in a session that I was receiving. And then yesterday, I went into a total contraction. And the other thing I will say is that this is being done for us, not to us. I keep reminding myself of that. But this is being done collectively. We've been talking about empowerment for the last few episodes. 2025 is about reclaiming your personal power. And that looks different for all of us, for each of us. But what lies beneath that is kind of the same for all of us. It is this self-worth, self-love issue we have of thinking we're not worthy, of thinking we're not lovable, of not loving ourselves, of not feeling worthy. And it's expressed through all sorts of different emotions or patterns: fear of abandonment, self-confidence issues, having lots of self-doubt, having a difficult time trusting people. There's a lot of ways that this manifests in our life, but the root of this is the same. We are being asked to reclaim our power, our personal power that lives kind of in the third chakra in our physical bodies, that helps connect us. It's the anchor that connects us to the earth. It's the foundation from which we can expand out in the upper chakras to receive, to connect with spiritual energy. So it's a very important kind of transition point. A lot of people talk about the heart as the transition from the physical to the energetic, but the solar plexus is really the foundation on which the heart and everything above it rests. And of course, the sacrum and the root, we want a full foundation, and they're all linked. There was an interesting thing on the Schumann resonance the other day where there was this huge amount of activation energy coming in, and then there was this huge amount of release in the solar plexus and the root. I think that was yesterday or the day before. And this is being reflected. So what I am talking about here, the specifics may not apply to you, but the generalities do. And this is a time to look at where you are feeling unworthy or where you are feeling unloved or unlovable. Because in order to reclaim our power, we have to confront that stuff. And then we're going to get into a little bit more about disengaging from beliefs as opposed to clearing them. That was a big realization I had. But I just want to start by saying I had this huge shift on Monday, this huge understanding, this huge invitation into expansion. And the result of that the next day was that I went into a huge contraction. And we're going to talk a little more about the details of that. But I want you to know that that's actually normal. It's part of the process. And that the more we resist the process, the harder it gets. So yesterday, I was like not having a good day emotionally. Physically, I was just extra clumsy and knocking things over, which is kind of like a neurodivergent thing that happens to me. I was having a hard time thinking. I was shaming myself all day long. This shaming stuff was really coming up about I'm supposed to be doing this and I'm not doing this and why can't I do this? And I was supposed to be writing up the final thing for my retreat so I can get it out there so you can all come and join me in Cambodia and we can expand together. Couldn't do it. And honestly, if I'd done it from that place of contraction, it would have carried that vibration. But I couldn't seem to stop shaming myself about being unable to do what I felt like I was supposed to be doing. I was really having to confront these self-confidence, self-doubt, worthiness, unlovable, sort of limiting beliefs that were really coming up, that we've been asked to start really looking at, that this deep, deep stuff that's coming up. And about halfway through the day, I just realized that I needed to stop resisting. I was doing the thing where I was like, I can't feel this way and I need to feel better. And I just had an expansion and how can I be contracted? And I need to let go of this and da-da-da. And I was just like shaming myself and all this really negative self-talk about not even allowing myself to be where I was at. And then finally I was just like, oh, this is just a bad day. This is just going to be a bad day. It's just going to be a day of contraction. And that's okay. I don't have to be expanded all the time. And in fact, if I listen to my own words that I am always saying and my own concepts that I'm always sharing on the show and in other places, the contraction is a normal part of the expansion. And when you contract and you allow for that contraction, then again, you're pulling that arrow back more, and you're going to have more of this beautiful forward motion of this expansion when you do get out of the contraction. But the first thing is the awareness of just acknowledging that you're in the contraction and the surrender. That was a big part of this for me yesterday, was the point at which I was just like, yep, I need to stop fighting this. I'm just having a bad day and all this stuff is coming up and I don't feel good about myself today. And that's okay, because I'm practicing a whole new way of being that kind of came in this thing. And of course, when you have a huge shift in your paradigm, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, it is almost never a smooth transition. It is almost always like a back and forth, trying to get your footing back. It's like being on a ship that's like rocking back and forth, and it's like you're all the way at one side, and then you're all the way at the back, and then you're all the way at the front, and then you're all the way at the back, or whatever, the port and the starboard, or whatever they call it. And it's like finding your way back to the middle, getting more stable in this shift. And the issue here is that collectively we are going through a huge shift. Today, which is, I believe, March 19th, there's a big astrological shift happening. And all of March, all the astrologers that I see, they've been talking about, oh, March is going to be so disruptive and huge, and there's all this chaos and all these things are shifting. And now other people I see, they're talking about tower moments, and I'm like, yeah, it's been a tower moment for a while. The tower just keeps going. It just keeps crumbling. And all of this is happening for us, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. It's not easy to watch patterns or beliefs that you've had about yourself for your entire life crumble down into dust and then have to rebuild. Even if you're going to rebuild something 10 times more amazing, the moment when everything crashes down and you're just in the rubble and the dust and, lying in a heap, you're still lying in a heap, and that's okay. It's okay to be in that space. And in fact, it's actually an integral part of the process. So let me talk about what happened Monday so I can get into more specifics. And I just wanted to start with that because I wanted to emphasize the importance of this idea that even when we have a huge expansion, there is this whole new way of being in the world. And it's making me think of, there was a movie when I was younger, I think it was Val Kilmer, and it was about this guy who couldn't see, he was blind, and then he got corneal implants or something, corneal transplants, and all of a sudden he could see. And it was completely overwhelming to him at first. That is what it's like when you make a huge shift. It's like, I don't know what's normal, what's right, what's wrong, I don't know. And then to do that in the midst of this whole right and wrong going away and like just inclusivity and moving into the 5D, it's a very intense time. And if you are struggling, know that you're not alone. Know that you are supported, even if it doesn't feel like it. And just remember to the best of your ability that this is happening for you, not to you. And then if you need to lie in a heap, then lie in a heap. It's okay. And then when you're ready, you'll pick yourself back up. Sometimes we think we're going to lie in a heap and never get up again. And that's the fear. We're going to start crying and we're never going to stop. The more we practice allowing things to flow and letting go of resistance, the easier it becomes to move through things. I woke up today, I felt okay. Not spectacular, but I felt okay. And I can get up off, I can climb up out of the rubble, out of my heap and say, okay, whew, I got some work to do. And that's okay. I don't have to do it all in one day. So let's talk about disengaging from limiting beliefs. And this is a big paradigm shift for me. This idea that, I think I'm going to tell the story first. Sorry. I was thinking about I feel like I'm talking a lot of abstract. So let me tell you this story and we'll start like focused in with details, and then we'll get a little more expanded and abstract. So I had a session with a practitioner on Monday, and we were working with this solar plexus stuff that I've been talking about. We've been working on this diaphragm stuff, this empowerment stuff. And I recently came to this understanding, leading up to this session, that I've had this pattern of allowing people to take my energy. And the image I got was like a bunch of people with straws stuck into my back. And in a recent session I had a week or so ago, we identified sort of the root of this, at least in this life. I'm guessing this is a multiple life pattern, and this is probably a pattern that a lot of givers have, a lot of people who overgive, especially a lot of people who want to help people who want to be healers, have this sort of pattern of overgiving, and like, where did this come from and how did this start? So in this other session I had this really clear, I had this memory that kept coming up of something that happened when I was a kid, where I had this person who was, I'm going to use the word frenemy, and I had gone to this person's house to play, and it was like one of the best days I could remember. And at the end of the day, this person told me not to tell anyone about it. They didn't want anyone else, like in school, to know that we were hanging out, essentially. And that's pretty hurtful. Even now, that's pretty hurtful. And I was looking at this situation as kind of this, me being weird and neurodivergent and being rejected and all of these sort of more 3D kind of things. I could understand the situation from that standpoint. But what came through in this session that I had that was much more 5D, expansive, spiritual, energetic, was the idea of this person was actually using me for my energy. Probably not consciously, possibly intentionally. So sometimes people do things intentionally on some level. They're doing it because they want it. They may not be conscious of the way that they're doing it. I want more energy. When I'm around this person, I have more energy. I'm going to be around this person, and yet not allow them to talk about being around me. That's what this situation was. But I suddenly recognized that this has been a pattern through my entire life of people taking energy from me. And in the way it came through in this session, which was really interesting, was that this person in this situation was actually taking my energy in order to project more success for themselves. And it worked. Through our entire childhood growing up, this person always outshone me. And to the point that I remember somebody coming to me a couple years after I left high school and saying, I was listening to this recording, this music recording, and I was trying to figure out who this like amazing player was who had this solo. And then I realized it was you. And this was somebody who was like there when I played this. And until this sort of energy of my energy being used to fuel someone else's light, let's put it that way, until that was gone, until that spell was broken, until both of me and this other person were out of the space, I had not been recognized for my own light. And this person who came to me, and it was very nice to receive that at the time. And they were like, it was just so amazing. And you're just such a wonderful player. And they kind of said, I don't know how I ever missed that. I don't know how I didn't notice that at the time. And I've had experiences of that my whole life, of just being sort of overlooked. I had a really nice conversation with, someone that I met in Cambodia at the sound healing retreat about being invisible. And, she and I were both, she's like, oh, are you invisible too? And I said, I am, to the point where, like, on that particular retreat, I went into the temple, the sound healing, the store where the bowls are, multiple times, and I could not get anyone to help me. Like, even when I was like, hey, can I get this? It's like I don't exist. And I think this is a pattern that a lot of us probably share. And so I'm going to talk about this, even though this is really making me, like, even as I'm talking about it, my body's uncomfortable and I'm getting like, oh, I can feel my chest and heart kind of like constricting. So I had sort of had this awareness, and then I went into this session on Monday. And the first thing that happened was I realized, and that sometimes things are like at the edge of your awareness and you're sort of like, maybe like it's percolating around, but it hasn't come forward. So first of all, I realized this was a pattern that has existed through my entire life, to the point that I just give it away. It's like, oh, you need energy? Here, take it. I've got so much. And that's one of the things that I think, if you're in this pattern, if you are somebody, I am a generator in human design. I just have a constant flow of energy. I was born that way. I can create, I can produce most of the time, not always, but I have this huge flow of energy. I have this fairly clear channel. I have energy that people like to describe as like pure. I have integrity, whatever words you want to use for it. And I think sometimes when you are that way, it's really easy to get taken advantage of. And so I have this pattern of attracting people who, again, probably not consciously necessarily, they're co-opting my energy to fuel their own light. Instead of doing their own work and like doing all the excavation of cleaning your lighthouse, to go back to an old analogy, and allowing your own light to shine, they're taking mine, essentially. And that was a hard thing to recognize, that even now that pattern has still been going on in my life. And so what happened on Monday is that we were looking at the root of this. We were looking at like where this came from before even this childhood memory. And what I realized was, what came up, oh, this is really hard to talk about. What was underneath this, when I excavated, the feeling underneath this was that it's the only way to earn love. It's the only way to earn my worth. If I allow people to take my energy, then I am giving them something that makes me worthy of receiving their attention, of receiving their love. And that literally was played out in the story that I told. It's one of the reasons I told that story. I will play with you, but you've got to do something for me. And in that case, it was very blatantly like, I don't want anyone else to know about this. But I know that this person enjoyed spending time with me and also had a really good time when we were together. And I also know this person probably wasn't consciously sort of taking from me. And the thing that gets so icky and hard to swallow for me about this is that it may have started, it was a survival technique. So I say people taking my energy, but it really means that I'm allowing that to happen. I am allowing people to take it, because you can't take something without somebody else's permission. I mean, fundamentally, especially now in my adult self in this moment, this pattern has been around for so long that I just say, oh, here, take my energy. It came through that as a survival technique. That's the only way I thought I would ever be able to belong. I would be accepted by this person as a friend if I allowed them to take my energy and I kept it a secret. I cannot tell you how many times I have not taken credit for something that I have done. And that's okay. I don't live for credit. I don't live for recognition. But energetically, I had this realization that if I am reclaiming my power, I cannot keep giving my energy away. I cannot keep allowing people to take it and use it to fuel themselves. They have their own connection to draw energy from. It's not my fault if they haven't developed it enough to call it in. And I was born with this really open channel. human design is coming up today, which is interesting. I don't know much about it, but when I did have a kind of an introductory reading, and all of my gates, they call them gates, are shut, I think they call it, or like closed, which means I know exactly who I am, is kind of how she said that, except for my crown, which is wide open. So people are attracted to me because I know who I am. I know what I'm here for. I've known it from a really early age. It took me a long time to get here because everybody's been taking my energy and convincing me that I'm not worthy of stepping into what I'm here for. And that's hard to accept, and it's even harder to recognize that that's an external pattern that has become so internalized that people no longer have, I just give it. Oh, here, take it. Oh, here, take it. Oh, here, take it. So all these straws that were stuck in my back of these people kind of like sucking energy out, they didn't even have to overwhelm me or anything. It's this pattern of giving myself away. And so we were working with this in this session, all of these limiting beliefs that I have to earn worth, that I have to earn love, that I have to give myself away in order to be loved, to give away my light. I have to play small. Otherwise, I might outshine the person, and then they'll tell me I have to like hide. Literally, you have to hide in the shadows. I want your energy, but you have to hide in the shadows behind me. I mean, that's a literal representation, which is kind of funny. Sometimes I have to like use these like crazy analogies. We're going to get into a really fun, crazy analogy today. I don't even have to do that for this because it's like a literal example. So we started working with these really deep limiting beliefs that I still have about not being worthy, about not being lovable, about having to earn my worth, about having to give away my energy in order to attract somebody and belong, in order to have relationships with people. It's like all about what I can give them. And what was coming through was this idea of these are really old limiting beliefs, right? These are programming things that like we internalize. It's such like, this was like an infant, again, this is probably multiple past lives of this as well. But in this life, like even as an infant, this was something like I felt like I needed to give my energy away in order to be cared for. And I think that's probably pretty common. It's a kind of a societal program that we have of earning our worth. And it starts really early. So as we were talking about this, and I was working with the practitioner, and I was like looking at these limiting beliefs, and the relationship I've always had with this is that we're going to release these beliefs. We're going to let them go. We're going to clear them from our energetic space. And I had this realization as we were talking that they may never go away. I might not be able to release these, to clear these, to remove the way it was coming through is this idea of cords. And if you've read my book, I have a different idea of working with cords than a lot of other practitioners. Cords being these energetic threads that connect you to other people, to relationships, to situations. So other practitioners will say, I'm going to pull this cord, I'm going to pull a cord, I'm going to sever a cord. Every time I've ever seen that happen, the cord grows right back. We have these ornamental grasses in our front yard that have been there since we moved in. Can't get rid of them. They just keep coming back. Doesn't matter what we do. Doesn't matter if you like dig out the roots. They just keep coming back. Until they are ready to be done being in that space, they're going to come back. That's how cords work. And I suddenly had this view of these limiting beliefs in that way. That I can't just clear these out of my system, because until the fertilizer that's feeding them is completely gone, and that may never happen. It's been 46 years. And so now I'm going to share with you this really fun analogy that I've been working with, and this idea of disengaging from limiting beliefs, not clearing them, disengaging. So the way this was coming through, I was working with this practitioner, and we always have a really good time together. And I was like seeing minions from Despicable Me. I've never actually even seen that movie, but everybody knows little yellow minions, and they go around and they kind of talk in like high pitched voices. And it was like they were popping up, you're not worthy, you're not enough, you're not lovable. And I saw them, and then all of a sudden I saw this like whack-a-mole game. So that old arcade video game where the mole heads pop up and you hit them with a mallet, and then they pop up all over this little board. And I was seeing these minion heads like popping up, and I was like realizing that my entire life I've been playing whack-a-mole with these minion heads, trying to suppress these feelings of these limiting beliefs. If you're not enough and you're not worthy and you're not lovable and all of these things. And the practitioner I was working with said, you need to just walk away from the whack-a-mole game. Like you can't, they're just going to keep popping up. And the more you disengage with them, the more they're going to try to get your attention. That's what yesterday was about. And so I had this image of being like in this arcade, which is a very sort of growing up in the 80s thing. I feel like there were like Chuck E. Cheese. I guess Chuck E. Cheese is still around. We had something called Showbiz Pizza in Illinois, and Enchanted Castle. And then my parents were on a bowling league for a while, and there's an arcade at the bowling alley. So we just spent our time while they were bowling in this arcade. And so I see this like whack-a-mole game in the arcade, and I'm stuck playing whack-a-mole. Like I can't, I'm like, it's like being at the casino. Just one more time, I'm going to win. This time I'm going to beat the moles, and I'm going to get them all down, the minions, and they're not going to pop their heads back up. And she's telling me like, walk away. And so immediately I got this image of walking to play skee ball. I always loved skee ball for some reason. And I was getting this white column of light that was coming in. And it was like, this is your true essence. This is your true nature. And you can't access this column of light fully when you're distracted by this whack-a-mole. So I've like walked away from whack-a-mole to the skee ball, which is very like a flowing game. I always liked it too, because you can't really lose. Like even if you sort of fall in the bottom, you get 10 points or whatever. There's something like reassuring about that. And so while we were doing this session, I was walking away from the whack-a-mole, and it was like, when I was working with this yesterday, it was sort of like turned into this like horror movie thing of like, I unplugged the whack-a-mole game, but it keeps making noise. And like the further away I get, the louder it is, come play whack-a-mole, just like this onslaught. And we were talking in the session about, she said, the more when you first start to disengage from these, the more they're going to try to get your attention. This is like your ego mind. This is the fear-based stuff. This is the 3D saying you have to keep it giving your energy away in order to be liked, in order to belong. You have to give your energy away in order to earn your worth. You have to give your energy away in order to be lovable, because there's nothing inherently lovable about you. These are all these minions popping up, right? So yesterday when I was working with this analogy, it's like I unplugged the whack-a-mole game, and it like magically comes back to life like a horror movie, and it gets even louder. And, I walk toward the skee ball, and it's like it's following me. And then, I'm trying to play skee ball, and all I can hear is whack-a-mole, like the whack-a-mole music in my mind, the minions going, yeah, you're not good enough, you're not worthy. And so yesterday, I just ended up in a heap. I ended up in a heap in front of the whack-a-mole, like I'm never going to be able to walk away. I'm just going to be hitting these minions for the rest of my life. And the analogy kind of got like even more, I was thinking about, okay, well, the way I used to think about this is I'm going to clear these beliefs out of my system. I'm going to, and like maybe eventually that's the case. But first I got to walk away. First I've got to disengage. And that's this idea of like, here's whack-a-mole, and it's over in the corner. It's making all this noise. It's the loudest thing in the arcade, which is already loud. My brain, that's a great analogy for my ADHD brain, is like, like all these thoughts and songs. There's always songs in my head. And so, I'm trying to walk away from whack-a-mole. I'm unplugging it from the wall. Eventually, if nobody's paying attention to whack-a-mole, it's not getting any maintenance, it's going to shut down. It's going to run down. It's going to run out of, the mechanics of it will wear out. And then I was thinking about this idea of disengaging versus clearing. And it was like, well, so let's say the whack-a-mole dies and it's back in the corner of the room there. Like, what if I can't get it out? Because it weighs 1,000 pounds. It's the world's heaviest whack-a-mole game. It was like, it doesn't matter. If you disengage from it enough, and it stops working, it can be there, and you can continue to play skee ball, which is stepping into this column of light. And I was really thinking about this because I was like, oh, well, is this spiritual bypassing? And is this toxic positivity? If I'm like, I can't clear these beliefs, so I'm just going to like stop thinking them. I'm just going to disengage. And like, that is the step to clearing them. And as I'm talking about this now, I'm thinking about how I've already done this. And there was a period of time on the show, I talked about this a lot, where I was working with this body image stuff, this eating disordered behavior that I'd had for like 30 years. And I just repeatedly disengaged with the part of my mind that was constantly judging my size and how I looked, to the point that I don't really hear it that much anymore. It might be there. It's another game in the arcade, but it hasn't gotten attention for so long that it's like, you know, off in the distance. And every once in a while, I find myself in front of it. I had a dream last night. That was last night or the night before. And my husband and I were trying to do something, and the clock kept jumping forward. And we kept, like, I was like, oh, we're going to go in the hot tub. And then the next thing I knew, like a bunch of time, I looked and like 3 hours had gone by, and we were finally standing in front of the hot tub, but there was a huge storm blowing in and there was lightning. And I'm like, well, we can't get in the hot tub now. It's not safe. And then I was like, all right, we're going to do this. And then the next thing I knew, like 3 hours had gone by. That's a little bit what this is like. I walk over to the skee ball machine. I put in my quarter, which is my energy, feeding my own light. I'm not feeding someone else's energy anymore. I'm not feeding old programming. I'm not putting quarters in the whack-a-mole anymore. I've walked away. I get ready to play skee ball. Boom. All of a sudden, I'm back in front of whack-a-mole with the thing in my hand, hitting. And like, wait, how did I get here? This is a good analogy for this idea of awareness in spiritual work. And as soon as I have the awareness, oh, I'm back in front of the whack-a-mole again. All right, I'm going to put the thing down. I'm going to walk back over to the skee ball. And it's going to take a lot of repetitions of that to change the pattern, to truly disengage from those limiting beliefs. And eventually, things that aren't fed don't continue to live energetically, physically. So if I'm not putting quarters, I'm not putting my energy into the whack-a-mole anymore. Even if I find myself in front and realize, oh no, I fed a bunch of energy. Nope, I'm not playing. I'm just walking away. And eventually I'm going to create new neural pathways in my brain, just like I have around the body image stuff, to where I have other opportunities of thought. And those body image things, they're still there. They're still, I haven't, that arcade game, I'm trying to think of a good, maybe that's Pac-Man, or like, because it's just sort of this constant thing. Like, I don't play Pac-Man much anymore, but it's still there. And every once in a while, like, I hear it, or I find myself in front of the Pac-Man. But because I've disengaged so much, I'm like, oh, I don't like to play Pac-Man anymore. No, thank you. And I walk away. I really like this analogy. So if it makes sense to you, hopefully, if you're not an arcade person, you can come up with some other analogy. So this is brain retraining that we're talking about. This is neural pathway retraining. This idea that once you've walked a path so many times, you're like in a deep trench and you can't see your way out. The way out is to disengage, And it's really hard at first because it's like, I got to scale this giant wall to get out of this trench. And that's what happened to me. I'm just realizing that's why I was so exhausted and disgruntled and disheartened yesterday, was because I spent all day Monday excavating my way out of this trench that was whack-a-mole so I could get over to skee ball. And then it's like, oh, I just fell back down and I got to start all over again. And so it's okay to lay down in a heap in front of whack-a-mole for a little while, get your strength back before you can get up and walk over to skee ball. But one thing I will say, because a lot of the people listening to me come in with a fawn response, a people-pleasing response, as their primary sympathetic response. We have access to all of them, but most of us have a primary response: fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And usually it's fight, flight, fawn, and then freeze is kind of the shutdown response. So if you have a people-pleasing response, you have a pattern of giving your energy away in order to try to keep yourself safe. That is what that is. I don't know that I've ever said it in that way before. And if I have, I sure forgot about it until all of this stuff came up. Because that's how this work goes sometimes. We have big aha moments, we have expansions, and then we kind of fall back down into the trench. And eventually, we disengage to the point that the trench starts getting shallower. So like with my body image stuff, yep, sometimes I trip and I fall and I'm like, but it's like, oh, it's just a little curve and I'll just step back up over it and I'll keep walking. But when you discover the deeply entrenched neural pathway, when you discover the whack-a-mole game and realize that you've been obsessively playing it for the last 40-something years, it's okay to be daunted by that. It's okay to feel bad about this pattern of giving yourself away and recognizing that it's hard to break that pattern. So one of the first things I did was pull all those straws out of my back. And one of the interesting things that's happened since I did that is that things are a lot more quiet. In my head, they're a lot more quiet, but also reflected in the world. And I noticed right away some of my relationships already starting to change. Because when you stop giving yourself away, not everyone's going to like it because they're used to that pattern and they're getting something out of that pattern from you. But it doesn't serve them either, because we are all meant to channel our own energy through our own system to tap into our own unique light. In this physical realm, we have a unique energetic signature that we are here to share. And so if you are giving your beautiful, unique energy to someone else, a lot of times we're doing this now without even being asked because it's such a pattern, and the other people are taking it without realizing it because it's such a pattern. It's not serving that other person either, because they need to learn how to access their own light. You cannot borrow someone else's light and really shine. It is going to be a cheap facsimile. It's going to be a shadow puppet on the wall as opposed to the full on a lighthouse. That wasn't a great analogy, but so recognizing that by overgiving, by giving yourself away, by allowing people to take your energy without your explicit permission or without a contract in place, like when I'm in a treatment, it's like, yes, I am giving energy because that is what I'm being paid for here to channel. And at the end of that session, I'm very good at that, at opening in that space, giving energy, and then separating with love and recognizing that is for my best good as well as the best good of my client. It's just in the rest of my life that I've just been chronically giving all the time with these straws in my back. So recognize as you start to shift this pattern, whatever this pattern is for you, if you're listening to me, chances are you have a similar pattern. You know, as you start plucking these straws out of your back or wherever they feel like they are in your field, not everyone is going to receive that well, and that's okay. You are still serving them. By pulling your energy back, there's a reason that in our energetic hygiene practice, we call our energy back. Giving your energy away does not serve you. It does not serve the collective. Done in a very specific way with very specific intention in a finite period of time can be absolutely magical. And exchanging energy with someone else can be absolutely magical. But living in this chronic state of overgiving, of allowing your energy to just be sucked upon, siphoned out, it leaves you depleted, and it does not challenge the person taking the energy to develop their own source of food, essentially, if you think about it that way. If they're sucking out your milkshake, they're never going to figure out what's going on with their own milkshake, and how will they bring the boys to the yard? Sorry. Bad joke. Okay. Whew. I made it through that. So once again, I'm just going to say this is all about intention and developing new neural pathways. I believe it's episode 59. I just sent it to someone today. There's an old episode of the show 59, it might be 69, somewhere in there. It's called Illuminating New Neural Pathways. This is the brain retraining. So if you're looking to work with that and kind of, the first step is to just recognize the pattern and forgive yourself. That's what was happening yesterday. When I talked on the last show about my husband pointing out that I was being so hard on myself, that was all part of this. Because when I recognized this pattern and I realized, like, people aren't even asking me. I'm just like, here, stick a straw in my back, just have it. It's the only worth I have to the world. Like, it's hard not to be a little bit angry at myself about that and a little bit hard on myself. And that's I was having a pity party a little bit yesterday of like, sort of being angry at myself for allowing this pattern to go on as long as it has. And now that I see it, I can begin to work with it. And this idea of disengaging, I think, is much less daunting than thinking I'm just going to clear this completely out. Like, I set this intention at the beginning of the year to let go of self-doubt and step into my confidence and to reclaim my charisma. And like, hey, it's here it is. It's happening. And it's not an easy excavation, because how can I have charisma if I've got 50 straws stuck in my back and everybody's sucking it out to feed their own? Work with this. Reach out for one-on-one help if you need to. Listen to that Neural Pathways episode and just recognize that this is a journey. And this idea of disengaging, again, when you first start disengaging from these really strong core beliefs, these strong limiting beliefs that have been around probably since before you were even born, that have been passed down to you, that you've held in past lives, that minion machine, that whack-a-mole is going to get even louder, even louder, even louder. But it's not going to, it only has power as long as you keep giving it quarters, right? As long as you keep feeding your energy into it. So if you stop feeding it quarters, even if it's like, yesterday I put in 100 quarters, today I put in 50. That's a huge improvement. Be patient with yourself and recognize that you very likely will need some help with this. I sure did and do. If you are enjoying the show and my random weird analogies and references to early 2000s or late 90s hip-hop songs, we would love to have you join us in the Spiritual Awakening Sanctuary. We have lots of great things going on in there. We're doing a virtual meetup this weekend, trying to do that about once a month or bi-monthly, every 2 months. You've got access to all the activations, including the one that will go with this show, all the bonus episodes, special discounts, and then a community of probably other fawn response people who have been having straws in their back and are learning to pull them out. We would love to have you join us. And lots of neurodivergence and ADHD brain, as evidenced by what I just said. This is perhaps one of the most difficult practices facing us as humans. Recognizing these limiting beliefs, learning how to disengage with them slowly over time, and reclaiming our beautiful, amazing, unique light. We are here to share that light with each other and to recognize that each one of us has this unique combination of this energetic signature that exists nowhere else, that we are meant to fully embody and share with the collective. And as we begin to treasure our own unique signature, we will see that reflected. We will begin to treasure others. We will show them how they can treasure themselves. And we will usher in this new age for humanity, this new earth, this 5D expansion. Have a beautiful rest of your day or evening. I will see you on the next episode of Wind Down Wednesdays.